Okay guys, today we're going to get started with the most important topic in Excel, that is pivot tables. Alright, this is pretty much Excel's main tool that you're going to be using throughout most of your analysis career. Okay, so pivot tables are really simple to use. A lot of people for some strange reason classify them like advanced Excel. They're not. Alright, there are some really important tools that are really basic and really simple to use. Guys, let's get started. This video is going to cover not just how to do pivot tables, but how to prepare your data in order to be able to work with pivot tables, which is a really important topic, and it's quite often very overlooked. Okay, so let's get started. Alright guys, let's get started. Before we dive right into pivot tables, which I know you're pretty excited for, we need to first talk about the boring stuff, which is how does the data need to be organized in order for pivot tables to work. Alright, Excel, like most spreadsheet software and like most database software, expects data to come in a very particular format. And it's a really simple, easy to follow format. Alright, notice, check out this table right here. This is pretty much perfectly organized. All of my titles are at the top and they're spread out to the right. Okay, so all the titles are at the top and they're spread out to the right. And the data itself, it's continuous, all right? It goes down and it's continuous, and at no point are you going to find a jump in data. What do I mean by a jump or a break in the data? Well, some people like to organize data. Say, for example, they create one table just for the sales in February, one table for the sales of January, one table for the sales in November, and so on and so on and so on. Guys, that's not going to work. Okay, that's not going to work at all. Why? Well, Excel expects the data to come into something that we call normal tables. All right, I'm writing it down here for you. You can write that down, tattoo it into your arm. It's going to be the most essential thing that you're going to learn in this video, normal tables. And again, it's just this simple formatting. Titles up top, and all the data goes continuous all the way down, all right? No jumps, no breaks. I don't want to see a bunch of different tables, one for January, one for February, one for the waiter that's called Mauricio, one for drinks, and one for beverages, all right? No, it's just all in one table, all organized, and each line has to represent one particular piece of data, okay? Now, in the premium course, we dive way deeper into normal tables, but guys, really try and understand this, because if you don't get it, Excel is not going to do any of the heavy lifting for you, all right? And you're going to spend most of your time trying to fix the data and getting it to work with complicated formulas. If you actually have it in a normal table, then you can get started right away to do pivot tables and have Excel do all of your job for you, okay? Well, without further ado, I've talked way too much. Now let's get started. Before we get started with pivot tables, I want you to know something, and that is that the most important thing that you can do for your pivot tables, besides having normal tables, is converting that normal table into what we call an Excel table, all right? Now, that's not the official name, but that's what I call it, because otherwise it gets really confusing. Go select any cell within your data and head up here to where it says Insert, and then click Table, all right? Insert, Table. Now, that's your Excel table, and that's going to convert all of this data, press OK, into an Excel table, all right? Now, this Excel table, right here where it says Design, I can assign a name to it, all right? Design, right now it's called Table 1. I'm going to change it to Data. So I type in Data, press Enter, and there we go. All right, guys. Now, this Excel table is going to have a bunch of benefits. I talked about that in a previous video, but I just want you to remember that pivot tables are going to be pulling the data from your Excel table, and if the data gets updated, say for example, we get an order 2501, then this table is going to grow in size, and my pivot tables are also going to grow in size. Maybe this doesn't make sense to you right now, but I promise, I swear it's going to make sense in a few minutes, all right? So right now, just convert it to an Excel table, and let's go right ahead to the topic of the video, pivot tables. All right, so select any cell that you want within your Excel table, head over here to Insert, and click Insert Pivot Table. Now, we're going to get this dialog box right here, and it's going to ask us for two things. First, it's going to ask us where is the data coming from. So I'm going to tell it, yeah, it's coming out from the table that I just created that's called Data. All right, and then it's going to ask me where is the data going to, either a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. I'm okay with it going to a new worksheet, so I'm going to select new worksheet, press OK. There we go. We have our new worksheet, and this right here, guys, This is our pivot table, all right? So things that we have to note before we get to work is this might be our pivot table, but this panel right here is what we're going to be working with. Without it, you cannot work with your pivot tables. Two things that I always notice in my classroom students. When they're getting started, just go ahead and press the close button right here, and then they can't find their pivot table again, all right? Then they can't find their working item, their pivot table options right here. Okay, so how do I get back to those? Well, go ahead and right click here in the pivot table and click show field list, all right? That's the number one mistake I see my students, my newbie students make. Make sure that that's not you. If you ever mistakenly close the pivot table fields dialog box, just right click on the pivot table, show field list. That's it, okay? Okay, guys, with that said and done, let's get started. The first thing that I want us to do with a pivot table is we're going to create a summary of all of this data right here, where we're going to show the sales by month and year. All right, so sales by month and year. How would I go about figuring out the sales, the total sales? Well, if you were doing it by hand, I told you what's the total sales of the restaurant, it'd probably head out to price, which means which is showing us each line represents a single product, a meal or a drink that was sold. So you head out to price and select, say, for example, the sum of everything. So the restaurant sold $2,051,000 for this period. Hey, I want you to check out the sales just of the first order. All right, so I just add up the price of everything that was sold in order number one. That gives us $222 for order number one. All right, so let's get back here to sheet number 2 and say, well, I'm going to grab price. That's something that I'm going to need. And my goal, my original goal was sales by month. All right, so I'm going to have to grab price, and I don't have a month field, but I do have a date field. All right, so let's start with that. Date field, drag it down here to. All right, guys. So we're going to grab date and drag it down here to rows, all right? And notice that since I have Excel 2016, it automatically converted date into years, quarters, and date, all right? And we get a 2014 and 2015 with a little plus sign right here. If I go click on the plus sign, it's going to expand by quarter. And then if I click on the plus sign in the quarter, it's going to expand by month, all right? I have here February and March. Now, guys, what I'm going to do is grab, say, for example, I didn't want the quarters, so I'm going to grab quarters right here, which was automatically created. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag it outside of this field. All right. Notice how when I try and leave it anywhere in the worksheet, it just disappears. Right. So I drop it anywhere in the worksheet, and quarters disappears, and now I have dates and months. All right. Now, guys, this is only for those of you that have an updated version of Excel 2016 or Excel 2019. Guys, if you're watching this from way into the past, this isn't what shows up for you. Your Excel looks more something like this, all right? Gives you a summary of every single date available in your data table, all right? Now, if you find yourself in this situation, and guys, if you didn't find yourself in this situation, pay attention. This is a very simple fix. Just go ahead and right-click on any one of the dates, and then click Group, and we're going to get this dialog box, all right? So it's going to ask us what do we want to group by, either months, quarters, years, anything that we want, all right? So just make sure that months is selected, and then go ahead and press years. Notice I'm not holding down anything in my keyboard, all right? It automatically selects years without losing the months selection, right? Go ahead and press OK, and voila, we're back where we started. Years and months, all right? Guys, make sure that even if you have Excel 2016 or 2019, you know how to group data. It's going to be an essential skill in pivot tables. All right, so we grabbed date, dragged it down here to rows, got a list of dates, and now we want the sales, all right? We had agreed that price was going to be the piece of data that we needed for sales. So grab price and drag it down here to values. And right here, we get the sum of price, which if you remember, we had already covered right here, all right? If I wanted the total income for the restaurant, I'd just add up all of the prices. If I wanted total income for order number 1, I'd add up just the prices for the items in order number 1. And since in this instance, say for example, I want total income for February, what I'm doing is going ahead, well, rather what Excel is doing is going ahead and filtering out everything that is not February and adding up the prices of just February. Right now, you just want me filter out February, or just filter to make sure that we only are watching February, and then select the price, And notice I have $158,000 for February. That's the restaurant's income for that month. All right, guys. Two things that I want to note, because at this point, my students are always asking, what does rows mean? What does values mean? Why did we drag the data down to rows, or why did we drag the data down to values? Well, there's a pretty simple answer. Whenever we drag something down here to rows, down here to a rows box, it's going to show all of the individual items of that field in a vertical manner, all right? Row by row. So that's why it's called rows. Values, on the other hand, whatever we drag down here, it's going to try and apply an operation to it. Now, that operation can be sum, it can be count, can be average, or any other number of operations that you have available in your pivot table, all right? So right now, notice how we grab price, which is inherently a number field, and it automatically applied a sum operation. So it's adding up the price. If we had grabbed something else, say for example, waiter, and dragged it down here to values, waiter is a text field, all right? Whenever it is a text field, then it's going to try and apply a count, all right? So that means count of waiter shows how many drinks or how many meals was delivered by the waiters for each month, okay? For each month. Now, this is sort of nonsensical, so I don't want you to get lost in that. I'm going to remove count of waiter. I just wanted you to know that when you have a number field and drag it down here to values, you get a sum. And when you have a text field and drag it down here to values, you get a count. And yes, you can change in between the two. We're going to check that out a little bit later. All right, guys. So right now we have a very nifty summary of our sales by month. Now, suppose you wanted to dig deeper. It's not just the sales, it's about the sales by drinks and by meals. Okay, that's interesting. Grab the type field and drag it down here to columns, all right? Notice how we get a new drink column and a new meal column, all right? So whenever you grab a field and you drag it down here to columns, it's going to give you all of the individual field elements right here, all right? Right here, out and to the right, create new columns for each one of those elements. In this instance, we have drinks and meals. So we know, say, for example, that for June, we sold $69,000 in drinks and $120,000 in meals, for a grand total of $190,000 in sales. All right, guys? So I think this is where you should start looking at the incredible benefits of pivot tables. Guys, I cannot state this enough. Pivot tables go ahead and replace all sorts of complicated functions. Way back when pivot tables were not a thing, you had to calculate all of this stuff by hand. Even though you had a spreadsheet, it was really, really, really complicated. And if your boss came up and had a grand idea, he said, oh, it's fine, drinks and meals, excellent. But you need to come back and calculate everything for wine. However, in pivot tables, you can just figure out where wine is, and it's right here in category. All right, so grab category, drag it down here to columns, and here we go, wine sales. That's it. That's all you had to do. Imagine if you had to do that using calculations. It's going to be considerably harder, all right? Considerably harder using formulas. All right, guys, I'm going to grab category and remove it from here. Okay, let's get back to where we were. Say, for example, we wanted to look at the sales just for any particular waiter, all right? So we're going to do the following. We're going to grab the waiter field and drag it down here to filters. Notice that when we grab a field and drag it down here to filters, this little thing up top shows up, okay? And that is my filter. So how does it work? Well, imagine like a document with several pages and you were scrolling through each one of those pages. This one is a summary for all the waiters. But if I ask you, say, tell me Valentina, how did she do? Click here, go select Valentina, and press OK. And there we go. We have the sales of drinks and meals by month exclusively for Valentina. And if you wanted to say Omar, then just click Omar. And if you wanted to see two waiters, Mariana and Mauricio, well, then you go back here, click select multiple items, and then click Mariana, Mauricio. Press OK. There we go, guys. We have Mariana and Mauricio there, and we're looking at two waiters. Now, this is awesome, and this is going to give you a ton of insight into your data. However, this is not appropriate for presenting or for giving this file to someone else. Why? Because you can't expect that other person to actually know how to use the filter. Okay, so let's remove the waiter filter from the filter box. And there's an alternative that Microsoft offers us, and that is called data slicers. Select your pivot table, and head on up here to where it says Analyze, okay? With your pivot selected, you should have an Analyze tab. Now, if you don't have an Analyze tab, then you most surely have a tab called Options, all right? So it's either Analyze or Options. Now, either way, you're going to find something called Insert Slicer. So click on it, Insert Slicer, and go ahead and select Waiter. So just make sure the Waiter checkbox is on. Press OK, and we get this little tool right here where we can select any waiter that we want in a much more visual way, and we are going to get the data for that particular waiter. So say, for example, I'm just looking at the sales for Rodolfo, and if we wanted to look at the sales for everyone, just go ahead and click on the little X box here, X mark, clear filter, and there we go. We're back to where we started, sales for everybody in the restaurant. Okay, guys. So with this slicer, with this data slicer, you can actually create interactive dashboards. Now that's the subject of another video, and we go really deep into dashboards in the premium course. Right now, I just want you to notice that this is what we're looking at, and slicers are here to make your day and impress your boss. Okay, so regarding pivot tables, you technically already know everything that you need to know about pivot tables on a technical level. However, when it comes to presentation, there's two things that you have to notice. First, this presentation sucks, all right? I hate this blue color that comes by default with Excel. It's absolutely hideous. So let's do something a little bit more presentable. In order to do that, select any button in your pivot table and go ahead and click on Design. All right, click on Design, and you have this data over here. So you're going to click on this little button right down below and to the right, and you can select any one of these designs, any plethora of designs that you want. So say, for example, I like this one. I'm going to select this one. Click here, and there we go. We have something a little bit more presentable. Now, this might still offend your sensibilities, your aesthetic sensibilities. You could go ahead and click on New Pivot Table Style and create your own style. Not a topic for this video, all right? Not a topic for this video. Okay, guys, so there we go. We have our pivot table looking a little bit better. Now, right now, showing it up as dollar amounts. What if we want to see a sales by month, but as a percentage of the grand total, all right? As a percentage of total sales. Well, that's really simple. Just go ahead and right-click on any piece of data, any piece of numerical data right here in your pivot tables, and tell it to show values as the percentage of grand total, all right? The percentage of grand total. And there we go. Now it's telling me that February is responsible for 2% of the sales of this grand total, all right? So drinks in February 2014, 2% of sales of this grand total. Drinks as a whole, they're responsible for 32%, and meals as a whole, they're responsible for 67%. Maybe that's not what you wanted. So right click here, and again, show values as. You have a whole plethora of options right here. You can play along with those. But I'm going to remind you that percentage of grand total, percentage of column total, and percentage of row total, those are the three main ones that you are going to be using, all right? Here it is, percentage of row total and percentage of column total. This is going to show us, say, for example, February was 7% of sales just for this drink column, all right? That's it. Okay, guys. Now, we already know how to color pivot tables, and we already know how to convert it to percentages. Another important thing is adding and removing subtotals. Now, again, select your pivot tables, head up here to the Design tab, and click on Subtotals. Now, I can ask it to not show subtotals. Notice how it removed the subtotals for the total year, the year totals, or show all subtotals at the top of the group. You could also do show all subtotals at the bottom of the group, but I really hate this one because it just messes everything up. I mean, it's extra clutter that you don't need, but I mean, that's a really personal choice. It's up to you, okay? Again, you can play with these buttons. They're just aesthetic buttons. The really important part is knowing what to grab from here and where to place it down here, all right? Now, guys, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything that you need to know about pivot tables. As you might have noticed, it takes like a very short while to master. We got through with this in 20 minutes, but, well, to learn, actually, very short while to learn, but it's going to take a little bit to master. So make sure that you start creating pivot tables. Make sure that you start practicing pivot tables. I'm sure that after like a week of doing pivot tables every day, you're going to be an absolute pivot table master. It's not that hard, okay? Guys, we're going to be looking at another video on pivot tables, And of course, in the premium course, it's pretty much everything about pivot tables because that's where the future is, all right? Everything that has to do with business intelligence, data analytics, stuff like that, it's all done through pivot tables, very few formulas. Okay, guys, with that said and done, I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you next time. Do you want to be an Excel god? Our online course will turn you into an Excel master in only 90 days. Excel is the most important tool in the office, but almost nobody knows how to use it. Most people dive right into Excel with no formal training and never use the right tools. And thus, they end up delivering messy reports that are full of mistakes and they end up hating their jobs. In reality, Excel is really simple to use and can do your job for you, if you know how to use it. But you have to pick the right place to learn from, or you'll only end up more confused with all of the different tools and functions that Excel has to offer you. So, what can you do? Our Excel course is tailor-made for you. We're going to teach you Excel, all of Excel, using real-life examples, from simple exercises to full-fledged business case studies. Take the online course and you'll be an Excel god in only 90 days. The course consists in more than 45 lessons and 15 case studies, all with their detailed solutions completely recorded in video, and you're going to be able to access them whenever you want, whatever you want. Best of all, you're going to have lifetime access to the course, and you're going to get any of the updates that we're constantly putting out for free. Even better, when you get our course, you'll have free access to our full Visual Basic and Macros course, and also to our Power BI course, all with just one single purchase. More than 3,000 students have passed through our classrooms. We've attended companies like Kodak, IBM, Cemex, HP, Continental, DB Schenker, and more. So, if you want to absolutely master Excel, make sure that you sign up now. You will become an Excel god. A2 Excel.